All right. That's me.
I hear Emily.
It's just Emily.
It works.
All right, there we go.
Oh, that was the other thing, Rich. We have somebody taking minutes today?
Yeah, that's me.
Oh. Not the county clerk, are you?
No, but I'm the minute taker.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was appointed by the county clerk to be the minute taker.
Okay, participant handbook, and even if you're not on the program review, if you wish to chime in, I'm assuming all of you have looked at these things. Please feel free to do so, because you have to all the input that we can get. Maybe I'll ask Angie to talk a little bit, and I'm doing this, I'm surprising her today, and I apologize for that. But just to talk in general about the handbook and what changes have been made, and in particular, we can talk about the section on here that has to do with fees.
Oh, yep.
So,
So basically, the participant handbook is the handbook that is given to each participant when they've been accepted in recovery court. This is one of the first things that I got together or fixed or edited when I took over the position. Now we'll have to add Rich. Now that Rich Green has joined the team, we'll add him, and then I do have to make a change and put Matt Wojcik on here as part of the recovery court team. But this basically is a handbook that just kind of lets all the participants know what is expected of them, requirements, the rules, that basically just step by step what they are to expect and what is expected of them during the recovery court process. It details all the phases that they are required or that they go through and what is expected of them, and the treatments that is provided them during those phases, including how many days they must be consecutively sober in that phase. And then as regards to what exactly is happening with like supervision and training, how if there's going to be home visits, if they have a curfew, what time is that curfew going to be? Just kind of a heads up of what is expected of them and what we will do during that phase. Normally, we start, like in the case we used to begin MRT in the second phase, but we recently discovered that it is probably best to start the MRT phase in the first phase, and Rich can explain why we decided to go ahead and do that, because he's the MRT guru and I'm not.
Well, I'll go into that real
before
quickly.
you do that, is everybody familiar with what we're talking about with MRT or recognition therapy? Everybody got at least a general handle on that? Okay, good. Sorry.
MRT is basically 12 steps, but it's not, I would say there's 12 steps in it, but it's not a 12-step program. It kind of, the goal is to change the thought process from typical substance abusers live on, I like to say day to day, but if you talk to most of them, it's an hour to hour. It's where can I get my next fix within the hour? So the goal of the program, by the time they get through it, and if they get through it within 26 weeks, I'm ecstatic, but sometimes it takes longer. It's a real involved program. The reason we wanted to move this from phase 2 of the drug court to phase 1 is the first steps on MRT has to do with trust and honesty. And the goal of the first phase of drug court is honesty and sobriety. So they kind of mesh together, and we thought that getting them the participants started in MRT at an earlier time would help them with that trust and honesty aspect a little bit. So that's pretty much what we're looking at, and then that's why we wanted to start that in phase 1 rather than phase 2, because to be honest with you, sometimes these new participants in recovery court struggle to get to phase 2, and sometimes they can be in there a while. So we wanted to give them that level of support. So that's where we're at on it.
So basically then after that, it just kind of, our first phase requires them to have at least 60 days of consecutive sobriety. weekly appearances by the judge or in front of the judge. Then when we go on to phase two is consists of 90 days complete sobriety, continuing to meet with the judge in front of the judge every week, and normally just continue with excuse me, your appointments at Family Health Center, groups, which we will finally be getting back with Family Health Center once this contract is accepted. Another thing is that we have really pushed for them to attend the NAAA meetings that we have in town weekly. There's also a pastor in Sheldon who just took over, I think One Hope is the name of the church down there. He's looking at starting a recovery program down in that area, which is great because there's really nothing down in the southern part of the county. So if you have participants or people who are looking for some sort of recovery meeting and they don't have transportation, but they are close to Sheldon, that is a good place for it. And they're just in the process of getting it started. So they're looking for volunteers and stuff like that. So we do encourage a lot of meeting attendance just to keep them busy. We don't, let's see where we go. So once we get to like the end of the phase 5, then, and they've done everything that they've stayed sober, they've continued to be sober, they've gone to their meetings, they've attended all their appointments, and all the criteria has been met, then they are able to apply for graduation. They have quite the application that they fill out. They have to get a couple of letters of recommendation, usually from their treatment provider or maybe their positive support person, maybe a probation agent, explaining why they think that they're ready to be graduated. Another thing that we do focus on is community service. We ask that they get a lot of community service in as much as they can. There is a limit. I mean, not a limit. There is at least a minimum that we ask of them, but there's nothing wrong with doing more than that. And with places like Connections and a lot of the food pantries, there's always help for them or things for them to do. They also have to make sure that they have achieved the GED, HSED, or the diploma during that phase. And most of those we focus on right away in case there's any catches or somebody's got a learning disability that makes it harder for them, because that's a lot of the reasons why some of the participants don't have a degree is because they just struggled in school and they couldn't ask for help. They didn't feel like asking for help, or they weren't allowed back at school or whatever. The woman, Anne is her name, that she works through the Northwood Tech here. I worked with her in the HSED GED program up in the jail, and she is very patient when it comes to things like that. If somebody struggles with like dyslexia or reading, I actually watched her one day read a final test to one of the participants or inmates taking their HSED test in order to get the diploma, because they couldn't read. They could read, but they couldn't read at that level that they were learning it. And she literally sat in there with them and read the questions to them for that hour and a half. So a lot of people, when they say, well, I don't have my HSED or my GED, I just don't, I have a learning disability, I can't do that. Well, that's when you're going to go to Anne, and Anne will help you make sure that you can get it. And if you can't, then we'll have documentation saying that they just can't. But I have never seen anybody not be able to successfully get their, GED, HSED. So once they have applied for the graduation and they've met all the criteria, they've completed their MRT, they've got their diploma, they've done everything that they need to pay restitution or whatever they need to pay, they've completed, then they're able to graduate, which, like I said, we've had the last, what we had in February, she graduated, January. So basically we didn't really change much of anything in regards to the handbook. It just kind of goes over, how to succeed, things that you need. We did add the participant contract, which is something else that we will go over in a little bit. So I'm not going to highlight it here because then we'll just go over it again. The one thing that we did discuss as a team to change, and we did some digging and discovered that we were one of maybe 3 or 4 counties that were requiring a fee of $750 for them to participate in the recovery court. $750 is a lot of money for somebody to come up with when they're, they just got out of jail, they can't find a job, they have families to feed. So we did some digging and found that a majority of the counties in in the state of Wisconsin are only requiring $250 to for the fee. So we discussed as a team that the $250 is a reasonable amount of money. Half of that, they have a choice. They can pay all $250 if they want to, or they could pay $125 that in cash and work the equivalent of $125 in community service. So that would be what, 12 and a half hours of
Yeah,
community
$10
service at $10 an hour. Which I think would be a big relief off of a lot of shoulders of a lot of participants, because $750 is a lot of money. So that was one of the costs. One of the things that we pretty much changed, one of the biggest changes that we made in the participant handbook. What was that? Was changing the fee
Does that have to be paid then
before they graduate. Yep. And there were certain in the past, they had to pay like, I think what, 30% by phase one, 30% by, or 33% by phase one, 33% by phase three, and then everything had to be paid by the time they graduate. We haven't really looked at how to break it down yet. It'd probably be the same thing at this point. But $250 is really not,
Actually dropping that.
yeah. Yeah. If he breaks $250 down over 12 months, that's, it's not bad at all. So a lot of them seem to be very relieved when you talk about it. Because at first you bring up $750 and you're not working, or, you just got out of jail or just got out of prison or you just got out of treatment or whatever. Where are they going to come up with that money? When they've got all this stuff going on, we didn't want to add stress to it. So that was one of the biggest changes. The major change that we made to the handbook was just changing those fees.
I did want to throw out at this time too, one of the challenges of recovery court that we have faced in the past is when they complete recovery court and graduate and we kind of shoo them out the door, there wasn't a good solid aftercare program of any type. And they'll get through the entire process of recovery court, which is generally a year or more, and then falter as soon as they go out the door. The concept is, okay, I'm done, I'm cured. One little hit of meth isn't gonna hurt me, or one glass of beer isn't gonna hurt me, and that leads right down the rabbit hole again. So what I want to do before I depart Russ County is start an alumni program, because the alumni program historically have seemed to work pretty well, all the research, and it's run by the graduates. Basically, we get it started and they pick it up and run with it. But it gives that level of support subsequent to Russ recovery court. There would be no cost to Russ County other than perhaps the initial meeting to set up pizzas and whatever going forward, but to get it off the ground. And the only thing Russ County would, some person in Russ County, myself, Angie, whoever, would just to kind of sit back and oversee it to a certain extent, but it would be run by the graduates from recovery court. So that's what we're looking at going forward, and I haven't got anything concrete set in it. I'm basically looking for volunteers to participate at this point. So that's where we're looking at that. Sorry, Angie.
No, you're fine. You're fine. So that basically just covers the changes. There wasn't really anything that we really changed in the handbook, just that whole fee, and then adding and changing the names to the new team members.
I think we'll hold on the discussion about the fees. It's down a little further on the agenda, so just think about that. I have some very strong opinions, which I'll share at that time. Any specific questions about things in the handbook? before I start on my list. Okay, well, just generally about the handbook, and this is real general. I think one of the things we have to take a look at is formatting this and indicating on what date it was adopted. That's one of the problems. I started going through all my materials and I've got, 5 copies of handbooks. And I don't know when they were changed or revised or whatever. So I think just formatting them, and I would suggest we go back to this format, this actually.
That's how it's set up. So when you print it out, that's how it prints.
Oh, okay.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. So,
And the name is changed to.
yep, it says right here, Russell County Recovery Court. Yep.
Good. Because I think that's gonna make it much more useful. And then again, the date that it was adopted.
Yep,
So when
it's-
CJCC approves it, I think we need to put that in.
Yeah, if you look right here, it says revised 8/20/24.
Oh,
So when we get it all done, then I can change that to 3/20/25,
okay.
whenever it gets approved.
I just didn't see it on any.
Yep.
So, and maybe you're not confused by that, but I am. So, that way. Just one of my general comments here, I want all the people on the committee to think about is that, and this is based on my experience with et cetera, policies and procedures, is that if what you put down on paper, I mean, somebody wants to come into the program, give them one of these, okay? And they read it before they sign their contract. If they find inconsistencies, trust me, if they're in there, they will find them. And they will utilize them as loopholes. I mean, yeah. Shameful, huh, Dave? But anyway, so my point here is if you write it, then you make sure that you're following it. As a lawyer, my rule was never make a rule that you're not going to enforce. Never. Never, because you're giving people an excuse to fail. And trust me, the people in recovery court don't need any excuses to fail. They've got plenty already. But if you are the cause of it by saying something in here that you don't really do, it's a problem. And that's my personal opinion, because I have had participants just find the most. Well, they can find problems with those. So, or they find inconsistencies where you're enforcing a certain rule about the program as listed in the handbook or in the contract. And they go, well, wait a minute. Jimmy doesn't have to do that. You didn't sanction him or do what you said you were gonna do. Why me? And they will find that, and it, my point is it all detracts from the effectiveness of the program. It does. You end up fighting those little battles about why Jimmy has to do this and why Bobby or Mary doesn't, instead of the whole process of recovery. And you don't need any barriers. They don't need any more barriers. So it's really important to look at this stuff and say, if I write it, are we actually going to enforce it? Are we going to do it? Now, I'll bring up one example, and this is, I'm not saying anything to, it's like your work on developing this and changing it. But for example, you said, if a curfew is going to apply, this handbook says there is a curfew that.
No, I'm saying depending on what time they're, because the curfews change by a phase.
Okay.
So they start out at phase 1. So if their curfew applies to them, say he's a phase 1 and he's at 9 and you're phase 3 and he's at 11, if that curfew applies to you, it depends on what phase you're in.
Oh, okay, because I
Yep.
didn't see the
Yep.
curfew on the other phases.
Yep, they're different as they get
Okay.
bigger,
Okay.
better, more improved.
If they're in there, fine.
Yep.
I just.
No problem. I would follow that now.
9, yeah, you're lucky. Yeah.
Reading level. far as participants being able to kind of comprehend the
Yeah.
information.
So
We always try to do like an 8th grade.
Yep. And it is, the reading is a basic, there's no like legal jargon, like herein as of therefore leading up to, it's very basic reading. And if there is a problem where they have a problem comprehending or reading, I will read it to them. If they have a question about it, I'm not going to sit there and read all 75 pages to them at one time. But if they have a question about something, we will go to that spot and we will read it. But it is all very basically easy to read. There's nothing that should confuse them.
And one of the things that we had, and this is for a future discussion too, on evaluating potential participants, is we did a screening with the wide range achievement test, which just takes a few minutes. And we found that the bulk of our people, even the high school graduates, and see some people that had technical school education or even college, were barely 6th grade. So even 8th grade was high. And we're talking about people that graduated, with a high school diploma, and they can't even hit the 6th grade level. So we did that initial screening to make sure, because it's one of the things that people are very, very reluctant to admit is, I can't read. Who's going to say that? So do you understand that? Yep. Okay, initial this. If they don't understand it. So that was why we felt it was necessary to put that in as part of our screening, and it only takes a few minutes and you can get a pretty good idea, a valid score for reading. So,
That was a good
Okay.
point you brought up also. I just want to throw out too, with the MRT program, which is got a lengthy workbook. There's also an audio version of that I had. So if somebody does struggle reading, I can give them the audio version of that workbook also.
Maybe I could get you to read the participant handbook in an audio version and we
Yeah.
record it.
Record
Put it on Audible.
Well, see, correctional counseling did
Yeah.
the audio version of the workbook.
anyway, I think that, and I want to take a real in-depth look at the evaluations we do, the data we collect prior to making the decision for acceptance into road. And also, fair warning, take a really deep dive into treatment. As of today, and again, this is not intended as a criticism, because I know Angie's not new to the position, but we've gone through, I think, 9 coordinators since the beginning, something like that. It's close to 9. I'm within 1, I'm sure. And so lots of changes have been made. But if you ask me today what the treatment regimen was, I can't tell you. I don't.
I know this is a good discussion, but we do have to move it along because we're on a time crunch here, so.
Well, we've got it.
Go ahead.
Oh,
We,
what's next?
anything,
Oh,
so was there changes made on that we need to vote on or anything?
the only thing that we really needed to change was the costs,
Okay.
and those
Judge, do you want to approach that fee at this point and jump ahead on that?
Well, I still have some questions on the handbook.
All right.
good.
For example, it talks about aftercare programs. Do we have an aftercare program?
And
Yes or no, we either do or we don't.
right now we don't, well, what's the aftercare program? Well, Marie is really the only recent graduate we have. And as of right now, Marie is checking in with me at least every other week. She came in last week before, and submitted a test. She comes in, she's actually participating. She got her facilitator's certificate, so she actually facilitates MRT with Rich, and she will also be participating in a trauma-based MRT facilitator training, which she will be taking. I think it's either April 4th or May 4th. So Marie, who is really our only current aftercare person, is making, and she was at court yesterday too, wasn't she? Yeah. Yeah. So she has been coming to court every other week, has been submitting to a test at least once a month, and checks in with me once every couple weeks. And
Because
it's,
that was something, I believe these were points that she came up with prior to her graduation.
Yes.
Because she met with you to
Yep.
discuss her
Aftercare.
aftercare plan.
Yep.
And so in terms of a program with multiple members, we don't have that at this time. Though with recent graduates, we've gotten much more thorough on developing an aftercare plan. for
Right.
them.
Right, because really, right now, when I come into the program, there wasn't anybody in an aftercare program. We didn't have anybody that was attending anything. Marie is our first graduate that we've had in 2 years. So moving forward, do we have an aftercare program? Essentially, yes, because she is still continuing to come up. And as we add graduates, whenever the next one is, then we'll be able to develop that aftercare program even more, expand it more. But right now, you can't expand if you don't have the participants.
My only comment is I would like to see an aftercare plan spelled out in here as to what it's going to consist of. For example, required testing, if you want to put that in there, fine. If you want to put in attendance at recovery court, a certain minimum amount of times over the first year after they graduate, those kinds of things. I would like to see a formal statement as to that. I guess. Does anybody have any other questions about the handbook?
I think we discussed the issue with the aftercare, putting requirements on there because once they graduate from treatment court, we don't really hold any power over them.
No.
They may be continuing on in probation, but we can't be placing any rules on them. And so we can make recommendations as to what they should be doing in aftercare, but we don't hold any power on whether they should be testing with us. Angie really can't.
Yeah,
Well, but if it's part of the contract, for example, as a pre-qualification for acceptance into the recovery court, of course you can.
Well, then
You can
they would
put it-
simply be continuing on in recovery court then and following their
Not-
graduation.
Not necessarily. If they were required, for example, most treatment courts require a minimum of 3 visits back to that court during the first year after graduation. So they specify minimum. We had some that came every week for over a year. So anyway, and they can be really valuable, just like on this committee, we're supposed to have a member or a person who's graduated giving us input into things like the handbook and so on.
we do. She's just working today.
The difficulty is that we can't enforce it for these requirements. And so we encourage it and our members are very active. And so we don't have any concerns whether or not they will continue to discuss afterwards. We just don't have any teeth in the matter to make them follow these requirements following their graduation.
Right.
My point is, they sign a contract, they agree to do that as part of the aftercare. You do have some control. And if they are truly in recovery, they're not gonna worry about that. They're gonna comply with whatever your minimum requirements are. It's a contract. You enforce it as a member of the team, the treatment team. You enforce every other aspect of it, but anyway, okay, I'll take Rich's suggestion.
Well, that the remedy then is revoking their graduation, and which I don't think any of us would like to do.
Especially in a case like the recent one who was here for 2 years,
Okay.
All right, we'll skip ahead of Rich's request to talk about the costs and the fees. Anybody want to be heard on that before I express my opinion?
We were struggling a lot with the fee issue prior to this. We had families that were struggling to make sure that the fees got in before this phase. They weren't getting paid because there wasn't employment. There was a crunch where we had participants just struggling so much prior to that fee being due. And that was one of our biggest issues, was arguing with our participants. You didn't pay your fee this week. You didn't pay your fee this week. We need to punish you because you didn't pay your fee. And so it reached a point with several participants in the class where it felt as though we were punishing them for their poverty. in them not being able to pay a fee, and they were doing fantastic in all these other aspects of the program. They weren't using, they were doing volunteer work and they were working and they had their children, and here we were praising them and then saying, oh, but you didn't pay us money.
Yep.
And so now you have more community service you need to do. Now here's your punishment, and I am strongly against punishing those that are experiencing low income or poverty, especially in our area.
And I think that's why it took our recent graduate so long to graduate, is when you have a job and you're trying to work and take care of your children that you just got back, and you're a single parenting, and you have to come up with money that you don't know where it's coming from, and you can't phase up until you pay X amount of dollars, then we're just going to hang out in this phase basically until we can, that money can be accumulated. And for some people, it's hard to come up with that kind of money. So, yeah. That was set up before I don't know where 750 even came
That was
from.
the standard, when treatment course.
Yeah,
So that would be the industry standard. The other counties realize that is not a doable thing. So
hmm
they lowered it. So we're just kind of lagging.
yeah,
Right.
on
yeah.
that.
I mean, there are counties that don't even require one at all.
And so then that is just absorbed through the program, that actual cost, if there is an actual cost.
Yeah, but then, so they're basically, they're not required to pay anything, but they have to do it in its community service, which is your match
Right.
or stuff. So, in your bigger counties where you have more resources for community service, then, they're out there doing all their community service that way. We don't really have, a lot of resources for people to do. There is, but a lot of people just don't want to look for it. They want it to be delivered to them. Connections is right here. Go,
And you're right, there are costs to the program, to the individuals, the participant, that, they do need to pay for. The MRT books and a lot of the other resources that we have going on are fairly expensive, going forward. So it's appropriate that there is some fee that they have to come up with, through the community service and or, a cash outlay. So I'm not a big fan of totally eliminating any costs, because, it's part of absorbing their level of responsibility also, we all have things that we have to pay for.
And plus, with that being said, because of the recent TAD grant changes, we can no longer use TAD grant funds to pay for incentive gifts. So that money that we would be getting from participants for their fees would be used to purchase those incentive gift cards for graduation, or the fishbowl drawing during the week, or phase ups, or just birthdays, or sobriety anniversaries, or, something that they did, like, say in our participant who helped the person who fell, we had the funding there for it, then we would give them, hey, a $25 gift card for, hey, thank you for going out of your way to help this person. So that's one of the reasons too why we would accept the fees, is because we don't have that funding coming from the TAD grant anymore to help pay for those incentives. Say so-and-so bought or got into an apartment, they need to set up pots and pans. Then that way we would be able to help them with that. Yep.
We anticipate that the barrier will be not what it was in the past with lowering it from 750 to 250.
I believe so.
And then so someone could pay 125 cash and then work off the other.
Mhm.
125, but it wouldn't be an option to work off the full 250.
Right. Yep. And even just by seeing the people that apply for recovery court come and sit down in my office and I talk to them, and the old handbook still has the 750 on it. So right away they see the 750 and they're like, oh, and then I say, don't, we're not gonna, we're talking about reducing that to maybe 250. And then you can see, oh, well, 250 isn't that bad. And it's really not. You have to have that paid up by your phase 5. That's, $250 over however many months is not, asking somebody to pay $20 this month versus $100 this month is a lot better for them. So,
And particularly when there's only $125 cash outlay that they actually have to come up with.
yeah.
I'm gonna call for a vote on the fee change on that.
Can I speak first?
Oh, I'm sorry, sure.
Being
Yeah.
chair of the committee, I'd like to do that. Thanks. I'm adamantly opposed to reducing it from some reasonable number, and I'll tell you why. I've dealt with this issue numerous times in different counties, and this can be an absolute motivator. What many counties have done is they've kept the $750 or some number over $500, but then given more options. For example, I remember 7, 8 years ago in drug court here, one of the things that could be used, especially now if you can't use other rewards, was the treatment team could say, you know what? We appreciate your performance so much this week. We're going to take $10 off your fee, or 20 or 25 as an incentive. So they could work it off by good performance and following their recovery plan. Okay? And those laggards that said, oh, you know, I know a requirement for this phase is that I find employment, but that's really tough. I'm having a hard time finding a job. Fine, we'll give you an alternative. You can work it off with community service. Now, there's a double benefit to that. One of the things, the types of activities that you get people involved are pro-social activities. These sites where they do community service can be invaluable. Very often we had participants that established relationships with those organizations, and we had a lot of churches that participated as well. It wasn't just our food pantries and stuff like that. And they would develop relationships with those folks because they got to see them every week. And those were positive for them going forward. So there was another benefit. Okay. And those that weren't motivated to do community service other than what was absolutely required as a minimum were motivated to find work and become employed, because it's not just about raising money to pay the fee. Okay, that's not what it's really about. But most of these folks have dependents that they are required to support. And until they get that employment, you can't do it. And in this particular case, 750, that's 75 hours in over a year. And they could work the whole thing off in less than 2 weeks of employment. So it's a motivator to get employment if they're balking at that, or if they aren't able to be employed full time, and maybe they're going to school, which is another option in here. Fine. They still have plenty of time to work off the entire 750, and all it's going to require is their time. And if they're not working, they have to. Okay. So I have found it invaluable, and so I would really like to keep this and then build in the options so that it's not a cash outlay. Okay, and even our materials, if we had materials that we use, we could waive that as a treatment team. So that they didn't have, like, for example, MRT. I don't know what the costs are, but you didn't have to do that. We could say, no, you know what? Your performance is such that we're going to waive that for you. So you have some built-in rewards that you can offer. And again, 7, 8 years ago, this treatment team was doing that. I was there. I was there almost every week for several years. So anyway, that's my position and that's my rationale. So I would like to keep it the way it is. So now, Rich, you want to get your motion? Go
All
ahead.
right. Does anybody have a motion? Do we have any more discussion?
I understand the idea of building incentives. And in this case, I don't know if you've ever had the problem with the gift card or whatever. But if you have some arbitrary standards, and I don't know how they won't be arbitrary for how a person might earn $10 off. You really gonna have to have a very, very precise. Otherwise, you're gonna get the, you didn't make Jimmy do that. Argument. Every time somebody does something that they think deserves a, you know, a reward, they think that you're rewarding somebody else and not rewarding them. And have to be very careful how you administer that process. Suggestion that you're gonna do it, you better have a really tight criteria and hold to it.
My only response is the treatment team does this every week already, whether it was gas cards or was whatever. They said, oh, you deserve a gas card for whatever reason. They decided that that was appropriate. What was the criteria? I'm not sure, other than it was a consensus on the treatment team that that was an appropriate reward. So I understand your point, but again, we give other rewards. So anyway, go ahead.
Any other discussion? Do we hear a motion regarding fees?
I would move to reduce them.
Do we hear a second? Motion is made and second to reduce the fees to $250. Any further discussion?
Are you gonna have any options for payment of that other than cash?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah,
it
it
would be
would-
the half can be paid by community service, which is already in our
Mhm.
book. We've
Yeah.
always allowed them the option to pay up
So
to half.
12.5 hours service in lieu of 125.
Did we move the community service payout up from minimum wage?
it's $10.
Yeah, we did that almost a year.
Yeah, it was in place before, I think right as I took over, we changed it to $10 an hour.
The motion is made and second to reduce the fee to $250 with up to 50% being available for community service. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried.
Okay. Last, with regard to the participant handbook, I have a motion to recommend to the CJCC that the handbook be adopted as amended here today. Including, I'm assuming this recovery court team is still accurate.
I just gotta add, Rich Green, who was just, Rich Green and Matt Wojcik have to be added because they came onto the team after I had made these changes, so they'll have to get added on there.
Okay, with those changes then, I'll entertain a motion to approve the handbook as requested with the modifications made today. Anybody willing to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second? Okay, there's a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. Participant contract.
So the participant contract really didn't change a lot. Basically, the participant contract used to be 37 different lines of jargon, lingo, rules, what is expected. I just took that and condensed it into smaller paragraphs and added a line to each number. So when the judge during the contract, when they sign that contract, and this is where the whole language thing comes about, when they sign that contract, they sit in the courtroom with the judge and the judge reads the contract with them. So there's no confusion, or if they have any reason to, if they have any questions, or can you please explain this to me, then those things are explained at that time. So
That is on the record.
yep. And it is, like I said, on the record. So when they were like, well, you didn't say anything about that, we can go back and be like, well, on this said date that we did do this and you did sign it. So each number, or so each line, they will initial. Then at the end of said contract, they will date and sign it with the judge that day that they are or that they are brought and appear in front of the recovery court. for their very first team meeting. So there was nothing changed to it. No lingo or anything was changed. We did change the whole fee thing that was in there and just added a line after each number so that they acknowledge the fact that they read that. That was the only changes made to it.
And just to add in, when we do get a new participant, all of the other participants get to listen to the contract all over.
And depending on how those participants have been performing in recovery court, they may also have to re-sign that contract with the judge that day based on what they did during that week. If there was any, I guess it'd be like a sanction pretty much. If they missed a curfew, which we did a couple weeks ago, we had a gentleman that was late for curfew. There was some dishonesty. There was some hanging out with people that they're not supposed to be hanging out with. All three participants sat in recovery court and went over the contract a second time and re-signed that contract as a refresher. So everybody is in the court room every time we go over a contract signing. So that is the only change that was made. Other than we did add at the end, and this is what a lot of recovery courts are adding now, is that they agreed not to use any CBD or hemp-derived products because that will show a false positive when it comes to THC. And because of all your different places here in town now, that is one of those recommendations that we do not allow the use of that. So that's the only change that we made there.
So paragraph 25 has to be changed to reflect the recommendation and to lower the fee to $250.
It is.
All of the payment options.
It says, I understand I will be charged a sum of $250 to participate in drug court. Up to 1/2 of the fees can be used by doing community service. $125 in fees is approximately 12.5 hours of community service.
That's not in the one that you sent me.
That's the one that's on the drive.
And that's part of the problem is we've got to get these documents identified as to when they were adopted so we know. Because the one that you sent to me and Judge Barna sent to me doesn't have those changes, so.
Yeah, this is what's on the thing is 7/20/24.
On what drive is that?
The SharePoint that Connie created and put everything on.
Hey, then she got a different one. All right, any comments, questions, concerns about the participant contract? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the contract and make a recommendation to the CJCC for adoption.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
It's been made and seconded. Any further discussion on the participant contract? Hearing none, all in favor of recommending for adopting the contract, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. That recommendation will go forward. Now, the next thing on the agenda is review and approve policies and procedures for the court and the treatment team, which I do not have. Are you gonna send that out to me?
Yeah, I can send it out to you.
Yeah, because I don't have.
Yeah, I thought she put it on the SharePoint either, but it's not on there, so I'll send it to you and put it on the SharePoint. But yeah, there's,
So I think we're gonna have to defer that.
yeah, which is fine, because really the policies and procedures is more for the team.
Yeah, I don't,
It doesn't
we
affect,
haven't changed anything.
we haven't changed anything. Nothing's been added to the policies and procedures.
And when was that updated?
7. Back here and look, shortly after I started. July of 2024. So, and basically the only thing that we did was just change the names of the participant or the team members. Nothing has been changed with the policies and procedures.
And we changed it. Or it said drug court, it went to recovery.
Yeah, it did the verbiage was still at drug court. So I changed all the drug courts to recovery courts. So that's really the only thing that changed.
Okay, well,
And then that one I'll send to you because I thought she put it on the SharePoint. It is a big file. It's 27 pages, so I'll send it to you.
We'll carry that one over to the.
Yeah.
Take a look at that, please. Do it, because I think it's a critical document, again, from the standpoint of consistency and doing what we say we're doing. So, okay,
So we're deferring that to the next quarterly meeting, Judge?
yes.
Okay.
And last but not least then is the contract with MHC. How many of you actually got to see a copy of that? You saw it?
Yeah,
Okay. So everybody has seen it?
we literally just got it, like, within the last couple of days before the meeting, or after the meeting even. Got,
What were the things that Rich Summerfield?
the only thing that Rich Summerfeld said is that he wants to see the language of the county of, what was that term? Something to do with the, oh, I gotta find where it's at. Marathon County was listed as the county of, what's the word?
Jurisdiction.
Yes. Which confuses me because Marathon County is nowhere. I don't know where Marathon County came in from that.
Kind
So,
of the Northwest.
well, I know where it's at. But I sent an email to Kristen, who is the person that helped draw up the contract. And she sent that on to her, the people that wrote the contract to find out why it says Marathon County.
Is that where MHC is?
No, where's Marshfield? Marshfield's in Wood County, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Wood County is the county where Family Health Center is located at. So I don't know if it was maybe lingo from a previous, I'm thinking that it's lingo from a previous contract or business agreement that they had done up. And that's like, what did a judge referred to as a boiler
Boilerplate stuff.
plate contract, that they just didn't change the verbiage to it. Oh, here, I think this is. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So I'm assuming that is why Marathon County showed up in that lingo.
Real
So,
quickly, for those that may not have read it, would you summarize what that does for us?
so basically what the contract does is, number one, it brings a Family Health Center employee and the general manager of the Family Health Center here in Russ County, Ladysmith, to CJCC meetings. It also brings them to our weekly team meetings.
Which, what I'm gonna throw in, that was one of the recommendations of the study that we had done of drug court 3 years ago now.
Yeah,
To have a provider there, so that solved that issue.
let's see, is this it? Yeah, and so then what it also provides is, they are, bringing, due to some recent jobs that had been lost, people quit, they couldn't find people to replace them for, the whole group aspect, the matrix group facilitating that they do went away. So basically what this contract does is it brings those groups back, where the participants, will be able to meet up to 3 times a week. They will do it over Zoom upstairs in our 3rd floor conference room that all that equipment was bought for back in the day. They will utilize that. They have the ability to appear by Zoom because it's the facilitator is in Minocqua, or she's in Marshfield, or she may be in Ladysmith, but still that gives us the opportunity to have those groups continue. And then it also gives us an evaluation, up to 10 evaluations. Now, most of the assessments, evaluations that are done are normally covered by the participant's Badger Care or Forward Health, whatever insurance that they have. But sometimes there is a participant who's been in jail for a very long time. And when you've been incarcerated for a very long time, you lose your Badger Care benefits. So if there's somebody that we need to get into treatment court right away, that allows that Family Health Center person to come into the jail and do that assessment in the jail so that we get that person that assessment that we need so that we can get that process going a lot quicker. So that's basically what that contract is providing. the biggest one is having a treatment provider back on the team, on the table to help us recommend the treatment that is being applied to the participants.
And what was the cost on it?
It actually came at $21,800 and we budgeted for 29. I mean, actually, yes, we budgeted at 29.
And it's covered by the grant.
Yes, it is covered by the grant. And it was the only thing that wasn't approved by Corp Council was that wording of Marathon County. And like I said, we will get answers from them with our other changes that need to be made, as you know, in regards to the wording about drug court, which that's just an oversight that they put on their part of it, which can easily be changed. And along with the when this was brought up, John Caleb was still a county board the chair, so that's just got to get changed now to Mr. Undershoots. But all those changes will be made prior to the signing of the contract.
My question is, this first line item in the service description rates, it says we're going to be purchasing psychiatric diagnostic evaluation.
That's their wording for AODA assessments. That's how they're wording their assessment.
Is that because their assessors aren't certified in alcohol and drug treatment?
They have all kinds. No, they're certified.
You're sure?
Yes.
Because I've been told to the contrary.
No, they have. I could get you that information, but they have certified.
Are they gonna specifically do the SUDS?
This substance use, yes. They go through and do whatever, I don't know what it's called, but
It's not whatever. The standards for treatment courts say you have to have a SUDS assessment.
is that the ASAM DM? Yes, that is the one that they provide us with.
Never heard of that. But
It-
I guess,
It's the assessment that they're given.
but my question is, what does it consist of specifically? I taught psychological testing in graduate school for 10 years. So these words have significance, okay? When it says psychiatric diagnostic, and first of all, then they don't have, they don't have people that necessarily are qualified to do psychiatric diagnostic evaluations. They don't list an MD, and that would have to be a psychiatrist.
They have.
I know I'm being picky here, but I want to know what we're buying. Because, for example, the standards say we have to have a SUDS assessment, not an alternative. It says SUDS. So I want to make sure that that's what they're going to do. The same with the group psychotherapy. It says nothing about treatment for alcohol and or drug abuse. And I would like those to be more specific as to what it is we're buying. Because I can tell you this, with the word psychiatric and psychotherapy, I can do anything or darn well please with anybody I want to do them. And it's going to fall under that rubric. I'm just saying. And if this is a contract, says what we're buying. The other thing I'd ask is, what are the qualifications of these professionals that are going to do the group psychotherapy? Are they certified in treating co-occurring disorders simultaneously? Because that's a whole new specialty. And that's what the treatment standards say we're supposed to be doing, not siloing them. Treat for alcohol and drug abuse, and when they get done with that, then you start mental illness treatment after that. It's not effective. It's not effective. So anyway, I'm sorry, but that's just important to me.
And so
Anybody,
when it says the codes though, is that just for their purposes, like
So what?
within their system?
Yeah.
This code.
Oh, that is their code. I don't know what those,
So that could just be what that's labeled.
their
as.
code,
Oh,
the code to them is their,
Sure. So does elsewhere it state what those would consist of?
I believe in one of the wordings before, one of the other communications that probably in the business agreement or something, it consists of the assessment that's provided.
it doesn't specify the training requirements to be met by the people providing the service. what their credentials are. Because again, I heard, don't know, but I want to know of whether or not these people who are going to be doing, especially the group work, are certified as AODA specialists by the state of Wisconsin, because it makes a big difference. So anyway, those are my suggestions for looking at this contract. Any other questions or concerns people have? Any other discussion on this contract? Sorry to be legalistic, but I've done this for too long to not be specific about what it is I'm purchasing.
Judge, I'm looking at the standards under screening and initial assessment. I'm looking at standard 9, number 9. Ensure that to be considered for participation in the treatment or program, applicants must meet current DSM criteria for moderate to severe substance abuse disorder, but it doesn't say who or what the requirement is for that assessment, unless I'm looking in the wrong place.
And that DSM is what they use.
Yeah, that's,
Well, I'll find it for you,
okay.
because it
This is Mo-
specifically
can you guys
says
hear
that
me?
that's to be part of the assessment.
Hi,
Hi, this is Melissa.
Anyway,
hi. Have you been here the whole time?
Well, I didn't get a Cjcc link, but I logged in at 9 for this meeting, so I've been listening
Oh.
for a while. I've been listening
Oh,
since before
sorry,
9.
I didn't.
So I just wanted to chime in because Judge Stewart is correct. I used to be a
trying to.
certified licensed abuse counselor. I worked in the prison in Wisconsin, and the only one that can give a client a substance abuse diagnosis using the DSM is a licensed substance abuse counselor through Department of Regulations and Licensing. So I guess Judge is correct in the sense that we do need to find out what their licensures are. Otherwise, they aren't performing and cannot perform an assessment, an AODA assessment, or provide services for AODA.
Right. And I'm trying to find the email that I got from her that lists the positions or the training that some of our that assessors have. I mean, they're not just people off the street. They're, you know,
Right. Licensed. They should be
yep.
licensed through Department of Regulations and Licensing if they're social workers and or AODA counselors. The other question I had too is I'd be interested in reviewing the curriculum and maybe seeing if it is based off evidence. Is it an evidence-based curriculum?
But the
Okay.
contract doesn't say that that person quits, they have to replace that person with somebody that's qualified. Right?
But in order to provide any type of alcohol and drug services, you need to be licensed.
Yeah, but I can't figure out why it's. I can't figure out why I can't. There, I don't know if that helps any or not.
You still there, Melissa?
Well, now we can't hear her at all.
Oh, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
There we
and
are.
if
There
we
we go.
have that, I was gonna say, one of the other things I was gonna say is like, I think in order to provide actual AODA services, I'm pretty sure you have to have a license. So even if somebody does quit that license, you would need somebody to fill that program with a licensed substance abuse counselor. And I'm looking right now at the website for Department of Regulations and Licensing. And technically, if we have the name of the providers, we can look up what their license are. Not
Yeah.
saying that we should have to, but I mean, it's all in there. And then the other thing I said is it would be nice to review the curriculum or at least have an idea of what curriculum they use and if it is an evidence-based practice.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I have on my list to put on when talking to them about the contract is what exactly when they refer to matrix, what exactly is their curriculum going to be for the groups? And
Right,
that
and
is
our-
on my list.
Are they in person? Are they virtual?
They'll be
You know,
virtual.
And then
The-
how many sessions and how much dosage they're actually getting?
Yep. So it's right now the current contract is set up for 156 sessions, which equals out to 3 groups a week at an hour, hour and a half a week, I think it was.
Well, their treatment provider is gonna be virtual.
Mhm. Because they aren't here in town. They might be in Minocqua, because there's like, what, 3 or 4 different facilities that Family Health Center has. There's Ladysmith, Marshfield, and Minocqua, and I think there's one other one. So that doesn't necessarily mean that that treatment provider is gonna be in Ladysmith. She might be in Minocqua that week, or she might be in Marshfield that week. But she's still able to deliver that over telehealth, or the telehealth that we have.
Would that be in our room?
Yes.
Mhm.
That
We
with
have
the,
all that stuff.
with all that equipment that we have, that we purchase and literally doesn't get used, now it would be able to get used because they would be able to participate via Zoom, which also helps because then that way they're all in one place and we know that they're there participating.
Would they, so they would report to the courthouse and then they would all participate in that meeting together as a group?
Yes.
And is it open-ended groups? So they're not starting and ending. So say like the group started and we get a new participant in drug court, can they start in week 6 or do they have to wait till the next round to start? How's that gonna work?
Yeah, that one we'll have to look at when we get to that position. I don't know how that's been run in the past. But it's kind of like be like your MRT.
It'd be like NMRT, and it's specifically designed for and recommended for an influx of new participants going forward, where the more senior participants help and provide assistance to the newer participants. So from what I read of the group dynamics, that is how it's designed.
I'm gonna make a suggestion here, and that is that we wait until we get some of these updates of that are gonna be discussed with regard to this contract. And then maybe if we could put it on as a brief agenda item at the next CJCC meeting.
Yeah, because I don't want to wait till the next quarterly, obviously.
Because I'm very concerned about this, very concerned. This is the core of your recovery court treatment. That's right at the center. By the way, are we contracting with that other organization to provide recovery services?
Mm-mm,
We're not.
mm-mm.
So this is more than the core. This is the only treatment we're talking about here.
Yep,
So to me, this is make or break.
yep.
And one of my reluctances is, and this is just a quick aside, we met with these folks at Indian Head when they first came to town, and they had an office, they may still have an office at Indian Head. And a couple things were very bothersome to me. One, they absolutely didn't believe, and nor were they going to promote 12-step programming. They weren't. Their treatment providers were not AODA certified. They had one in Rhinelander, but they didn't have one that was available here. So again, that was several years ago. I understand that maybe they've changed the program, but those were red flags to me that we really needed to take a look at if they were going to deliver service. The other thing they said is we only will serve low risk clients. Now, obviously, they've said they've changed that approach, but they said we will only serve low risk people, which is contrary to what the whole court's about. So anyway, if it's okay with you folks, we'll defer this discussion on the contract after we get a update next time from Angie. Is that okay with you?
So as you know, when looking at this, like the one, this Belinda that does a lot of the treatment, I would have to say the initials after her name is SACAAS. So in regards to what kind of certification she has, that is what she's considered as.
But then I would put in the contract that substance abuse certification is included in the contract so that it's clear the person's qualifications is going to be doing the treatment. Because again, this is it.
Judge, can we leave this open to, once those changes are made, perhaps, do a special meeting or even an online meeting to move this forward? Would that be acceptable?
Well, I think if you put it on the next CJCC agenda, we can do it for you right there. We can, if there's any questions, they can be discussed briefly. We all know what the issues are, I think now, at least my issues.
Can I-
and we can vote on it and approve it there if it's acceptable. Go ahead.
Can I ask another question? So I guess,
Absolutely.
so I guess I'm just looking at some of, I'm looking at Eau Claire Drug Court, and I know they're not the same as us, but I'm looking at their contracted treatment contract. And so some of the things that I'm seeing in here is like, so they identify like the treatment provider will do an evaluation. This evaluation will be completed before the individual starts programming. And then once they're in programming, they'll develop like a case plan that they'll be, or a treatment plan. So, you know, is that all part of the contract too? So that would include evaluation, treatment plan, and then at the end of treatment, a discharge summary and any recommendations. So I guess without seeing the contract, I'm not sure of what they're all providing, but that would be nice to have that information.
Yeah, and that's currently what they're doing now. Like current participants who have been accepted or are possibly being accepted in recovery court are going to the family health center where they do number one, they do an intake interview. And then they meet with, like in this case, Belinda, who does, I think it's over 2 appointments. She does her evaluation, and then they set forth the treatment plan. And as of right now, our participants are going to Family Health Center for their treatment at this point, it's every Thursday that they make time for every one of our recovery court participants. As far as aftercare, I don't know because we don't have anybody that has started with family health care or family health center that's finished, you know, as in regards to what kind of aftercare that they'll have or moving forward after they're done.
Is the treatment court getting progress reports after each meeting?
We haven't been because they haven't been able to come to the table, but I do get updates if I need them. She does send me emails every week saying, yes, everybody showed up for every appointment, or no, they didn't show up for appointments. So that is what I'm getting from them. If they're progressing, then if they're doing well, I don't hear anything because they're doing well. She does inform me when people don't show up.
Okay.
And if they are trying to, like, for instance, we have a participant or a person who's trying to become a participant in recovery court. They were supposed to attend a meeting this week. They did not attend that meeting or that appointment. And they did let me know right away that that participant did not show up for that meeting and has not answered his phone. So they do a very, very good job of communicating with me how those individuals are doing in regards to showing up for treatment and communicating or answering phones or whatever it is.
But I think it's important to look at their progress in treatment. And if it is good news, that should be specifically shared with the treatment team
Right.
every week.
And
I think that's the idea.
and that is the idea.
They'd come to the weekly. meeting.
Right, and they will be coming to the weekly meeting to do those progress reports. But as of right now, we really haven't had anybody. I mean, we've got new participants that just started in November, and some of those participants either were in jail or they haven't been going to the progression isn't there because they haven't been consistently going. They just started back in, I think, November, September. But yes, that is part of the reason to bring them to the table, to the meetings every week, so that they could go over person by person, say, okay, we're going to cover, let's next talk about John Doe. And then that participant provider or that treatment provider will be able to say, this week in our treatment, this is what we covered and this is how the person is progressing. That's what bringing them to the table will do.
And do you have a specific copy of the individualized treatment plan that provider has developed for each individual?
I get a copy of their evaluation. I don't know if it shows their treatment on there or not, but I have copies of every person's evaluation.
But if you can't ascertain whether or not they're doing well in their treatment plan, how can you do that if you don't know what the treatment plan is? In other words, the accountability of the provider to say, okay, here's the treatment plan. This is what we said this individual should be working on as far as issues, et cetera, strategies. And that's the only way they can be held accountable.
Right?
Is are you fulfilling the treatment plan that you developed? And without seeing the treatment plan, and that's something I would consider in the contract as well, that they're obligated to provide that to the treatment team.
And
I'm
they,
not saying, well, generally, yada, yada, whatever, so.
I mean, if it's a thing of, are they providing it with me if I ask, then yeah, they're providing it with me. Are they giving it to me? You know, how that person, you know, did during that week? No, because I don't ask for that. Because if they're not participating, then they let me know.
But I'm talking about the specific treatment plan. For example, we used to get them from our mental health providers, and we would get them from our EODA providers on a weekly basis. They would say, okay, here's a treatment plan, here's what we're working on, here's how they're doing. So that we could evaluate how effective they were in actually following the treatment plan
Right.
that they designed.
Right. And once we get that contract with them, that's one of those things that we can require. We don't have a requirement for that now because we don't have a contract with them.
But my suggestion is it be put in the contract.
Oh yeah, it'll get put in the contract that we get updates every week. But like I said, right now, it's not in the contract.
Jeff,
So
why don't you, subsequent to this, being as how we're tabling this until the next month, would you be kind enough to send Angie or myself an email, addressing your concerns? We'll make sure that that gets addressed.
Okay, and if there's anyone else, just quickly here, and I know we're over time now, but does anyone have any suggestions for our next quarterly meeting as to topics? What do you think the priorities are that we should maybe take a look at? Any thoughts, ideas? We still have some of the standards that we haven't covered yet. Any priorities for this group? Say, boy, I'd sure like to take a look at that and see if we have a consensus or whatever, or some recommendation we could make. Any thoughts, ideas?
Well, I think we need to reach out with law enforcement people to get them in here. That's gonna be a priority, and see what their thoughts are.
Well, the county board representative and a participant and past participant. So if you were gonna say something.
Well, I was just gonna ask, are we talking about just treatment court, or are we talking about federal?
Well, I think if you have some general topics, and I know you're working on some stuff, okay, what I would suggest is you ask the chair to put those on the agenda, and then all of us can listen to it. And then if we want to focus on the side with this PRC, we can do that and see if we can't help you achieve what it is you're trying to achieve.
Excellent.
Does that make sense?
Perfect sense.
Okay,
I have a recommendation.
go ahead.
So I know the treatment court conference is coming up pretty soon, and I anticipate the majority of the team will probably be attending. So it may be beneficial for them maybe to come back once they get back, and they can present, you know, maybe some of the new information that they learned, and what are some new things that they learned at this conference that we can adopt and implement into our own court. Because I know I went to a conference 2 years ago, and they were doing a really, you know, we got presentations on what, you know, different areas and different counties are doing, and some of that stuff is pretty cool. So it'd be nice to, you know, maybe adopt or implement something new based on what some of the newest trends are in treatment courts across the state.
What are the dates for the training?
Oh, it's
April 22nd through the 25th.
Okay,
Yep.
so that'll actually be during the next CJCC meeting.
Well, and we'll have to probably not have a CJCC meeting because, I mean, I won't be here. Judge won't be here. Emily won't be. None of the team members will be here because that meeting, the state conference is April 22nd through the 25th next month.
And what would be our normal date?
It's normally the 20, it's the 1, 2, 3, 4th Thursday of the month. It's 24th of April
Yeah.
next month. We will all be.
We'll be gone.
Well, I'll let.
All right,
the
I'm
chair
gonna say, I wanna still CJCC. So why don't I see if I can send out an alternate date for that, going forward.
That
Because-
worked for me. I think the idea of very soon after that training.
Yeah.
That there be a presentation to the whole CJCC so that we can get a flavor for what's new, what we're doing well, whatever, but the reflections from the participants. Is the new sheriff gonna participate in this, or they got,
No, he doesn't go to that. You mean, you're talking the conference?
yeah, well, I thought maybe they would be on the,
Matt is not going because Matt has a leadership conference that same week, so he is not going. But Matt and Pat and Rich were sent the information for the standards training that's coming up in, I think it's Rice Lake in May that they'll be attending instead, since they can't go to that conference.
Rich will look for an alternative date. Any further ideas on our next quarterly meeting, which will be June.
June.
It's, yes, it's all legitimate. We're supposed to scrutinize the entire program. At this time, we're focusing on the recovery court, so absolutely, because that's part of it.
I entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody object? Okay, let's,
Fine. And they were all granted.
Bye, Melissa.
Not
Bye, take care.
one.
that's okay, Emily, next time we're gonna deny it.